Hello everyone. I hope you're doing well and keeping safe. As we all know, 1st May onwards, everyone about the age of 18 is now going to be eligible to take the vaccine. Many of us have already got ourselves registered today in order to be able to take our first jab after the 1st of May. I had multiple questions with regards to which vaccine should I be taking, what should be the recommended gap, is it 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, what are the different kinds of vaccines. So I decided to speak to the people who I reach out to every time I have any questions relating to my health, medicine, any disease, or how I'm feeling in general. So I decided why not record this session and even get some of your questions answered, which you all had put up on my polls and when I had asked a few of my friends. So today we have with us Dr. Kishore Sandhu, who is an ENT surgeon and is the head of Airway Sector Unit at CHUV Lausanne University Hospital in Switzerland. We also have Dr. Gauri Vaidya, who is an ENT specialist in Nagpur, and Dr. Abhishek Vaidya, who is a senior head and neck oncosurgeon at the National Cancer Institute, Nagpur.
Here in Switzerland. The objective today is to share with you a variety of these vaccines for COVID-19 disease. And remember, there are multiple vaccines, and the vaccine technology has been here in market over the last at least 50 years, if not more. So you must have taken the BCG vaccine, which is for tuberculosis. So this is the Bacille Calmette Guerin vaccine, and this has been in market for many, many years. Apart from those vaccines, basically there are two basic varieties for viral infections. Either they are dead vaccines or they are live attenuated vaccines. Attenuation means that you either reduce the power of the virus or you actually weaken them. And you have a variety of these vaccines which could be related to the proteins, depending on what exactly we want to target the virus and the vaccine on. So the first vaccine that we have is the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. And always see that, these are viral vectored, means that, they are genetically transformed, and it provides information to our cell, what is foreign, and that information actually allows our body to develop an immune response. So all these vaccines which are there in the market are basically double dosed, except the Johnson & Johnson one, which is a single dose. We'll talk about all these things a little bit later. So the second thing that you need to know is that Covaxin is basically in the market in India by Bharat Biotech. And this is an inactivated virus, wherein you basically weaken the virus, and this is the virus, the coronavirus itself, and this is obtained from the National Institute of Virology in Pune.
So if we talk about the Indian vaccines, in India we have Covishield and Covaxin. Covaxin is made in collaboration with AstraZeneca and Oxford Institute, and it is produced in Serum Institute of India, that is at Pune. And Covaxin is a completely indigenous vaccine developed by Bharat Biotech. Now Covishield is a DNA vaccine, and the way it works is they use a genetic code which has been designed to code into the spike protein or the S protein of the coronavirus, which is the most immunogenic protein, as in it is the one which actually elicits the immune response in the host, in the humans. So what scientists have done actually is they have used a different virus, an adenovirus from a chimpanzee, and this is called a viral vector or the viral vehicle. And a part of the DNA of that adenovirus is deleted and this genetic code is inserted instead. So now when this adenovirus from a chimpanzee, which now has part of a genetic code in it, is injected in your body, it enters into the cell, it enters into the nucleus of the cell, and it gets converted into something called as a mRNA or a messenger RNA, which then instructs the cell to secrete this particular protein, the S protein or the spike protein, and it elicits an immune response from the body. So we develop antibodies to this spike protein. Covaxin is actually the entire COVID-19 virus, the coronavirus virion, in an inactivated form. So this, when injected inside your body, since it is inactivated, it cannot multiply, so you can't get the disease, but it is capable still of inducing a immune response. So you will get all the immunogenic response of the virus, but not the infection. The Pfizer vaccine or the Moderna vaccine, they work on the mRNA technology, where directly the mRNA is injected into the cell and then it codes the spike protein or the S protein, and this process is similar to how it is with the Covishield virus vaccine.
Critical to know is that what is the storage requirements. So if you see here, the ones which are in blue circles basically are those which are very typically probably important for the Indian scenario. Because remember that, this is the temperature at which these vaccines are stored. In a normal refrigerator, we have a temperature of anywhere between 3 to 8 degrees centigrade. So it makes interesting for the Indian scenario, because we are in the tropics, to have these vaccines so that the cold chain of vaccine storage is maintained and we don't lose the power of the vaccine. Now, if you see the Moderna and the Pfizer one, which are basically based on the mRNA, messenger RNA vaccines. So if you see here, they require very low temperatures. Might be a little tricky in the Indian scenario. So these are the possible reasons. Apart from this, there are many other reasons why certain types of vaccines are in India. Certain types of vaccines, unfortunately, might be a little difficult to have it in our country. The second thing that I think is really confusing for a lot of young people like you is, what do you mean by efficacy? So remember, efficacy means that either it is the prevention or it is reduction of the disease burden. All these vaccines have been designed in trials. What I mean by trials means that you tried it first in animals, then you try it into 3 phases in human beings, and see what is the efficacy. Meaning, with 1 or 2 shots of the vaccine, how could we reduce or treat the symptomatic COVID? What I mean by symptomatic COVID would mean that the symptoms of COVID disease, if we have difficulty in breathing, respiratory problems, symptoms. So whatever we are doing is basically to reduce symptomatic disease. And this is typically outside humans or in labs or combined. They are done on something called as randomized controlled trials. It means that you test the vaccine versus a placebo. So let's say you take an arm or a sample arm of, let's say, 1,000 people. So in some patients, and that includes HIV, that includes all the comorbidities that we know of, so that we really have a homogeneous group. Homogeneous means it is the same category in arm A and arm B, wherein arm A gets the vaccine and arm B gets a placebo, and we see what is the efficacy of this particular vaccine. And always remember that the efficacy could mean an overestimation of performance in the real world. Now, what is the real world? That's where the effectivity of the vaccine or a drug or whatever it is starts playing a role. What is that effectiveness? It is basically observations that, all right, this particular vaccine or the drug came in the market with X efficacy, but really, is it that X efficacy in the real world? What I mean by real world, it means that these are observations based on storage of the vaccine or the drug. What kind of patients are there in the real world? Because there you'll have a lot of variables that start coming in. So these are basically observations or case-controlled trials. And it severely is affected by the storage, the chain reactions, the cold chain reactions, the patients, etc., etc. So these are the 2 fundamental differences between efficacy of a vaccine and effectiveness of a vaccine. It's all playing around with words, but to make it more scientifically accepted and for the common people to understand, it is basically what is the story happening in the real world versus what is happening in labs or in trials when you have certain statistics playing
Coming
around.
back to the discussion about efficacy, because that is really what everybody is talking about. We are worried when we see reports of Pfizer vaccines being 97% efficacious and our vaccines being in the range of 60 or 70%. Let's understand first of all that vaccine efficacy has to be taken in perspective of where the trial was conducted, at what time of the COVID wave or the COVID peak in that particular area was the trial conducted. So a better part of the Pfizer trials were done when the COVID cases in the general population were not really at a peak. So it's not really fair to compare the two vaccines, because quite a bit of the trials with Covishield and Covaxin, quite a part of the trial were actually during the peak of the wave in India. So they are they are maybe even more representative of what is happening in the country right now. So the efficacy that whatever we are seeing is probably more relevant, because again, we are at a peak of the vaccine. Secondly, as regard efficacy in Pfizer trials, what they have called as successful protection is if a patient, rather if a subject did not get any symptoms. Right? But in Covishield, they have actually swabbed each participant. And if a participant tested positive on the swab, even if he did not have any symptoms, that was considered as a vaccine failure. So maybe if Pfizer had swabbed everybody, they would have also had lower numbers. We don't know, because we know, everybody knows there are so many asymptomatic carriers, right? So therefore, again, that is another reason why we really cannot compare. But what we can compare, and where all the vaccines, be it Sputnik, be it Pfizer, Moderna, Covaxin, any vaccine has done really well, is they have shown significant protection against hospitalization, death. So yes, the efficacy at that level is absolutely comparable between all the vaccines. Yeah, anything you want to add, Abhishek?
So remember what the vaccine is going to do. The vaccine might not be able to prevent infection. What the vaccine certainly does is it decreases the severity of infection, and a large part of the efficacy translates to a lot of the endpoints have been how effectively does a vaccine prevent severe disease / death. So the efficacy of a vaccine in preventing severe disease or death due to disease is very, very high. It might not prevent reinfection, especially with newer strains emerging, but severe disease is certainly prevented. So there's a lot of technical jargon about the efficacy of vaccine in terms of 93 for Moderna or Pfizer versus AstraZeneca around 76. But rest assured in knowing that all of these are almost equally efficacious in preventing serious disease.
So any vaccine goes through certain animal experiments, and then you have human clinical trials. And then you go into mass production, and then you go in for distribution. So, you are from a business side, so, you know how it is. There is a production of a particular drug or a medicine, vaccine. Before that, we need to do research and development that, is this good for a particular disease? And then go in for a mass scale production and then distribution. So what they did is, they invested in the research and development massively. They also invested massively in the last phase, meaning production. See, the companies who are manufacturing these vaccines have been in the market for the last many, many years. They have a very, very good, sound, robust track record. They have been in the market producing good material, with a very, very strong impact for human medicine. And plus, number three, they have time and again proved to be leaders in vaccine production. That includes the research and development side, as well as good conditions for distribution and production. So what has happened is that, they invested money into research and development. They went ahead straight away in producing large scale, because they were sure that, okay, this is going to be absolutely fine. And they already made, without any changes, a particular drug which was made in the research and development and went straight into mass scale production. So this was a risk, actually, meaning that for some reason, the middle portion, meaning the animal studies or clinical trials in humans, did not give them the necessary results. All the production that they have done would probably go into garbage. But they took that decision. They took that decision because of, it is essential right now to have the vaccine in the market so that, you can reduce the disease burden, you can reduce the deaths, etc., etc. Economically, it gets more better for every country. So, all the sequelae of the disease or the COVID pandemic can be reduced. But they took this risk of going for mass productions of millions of vaccines in spite of the fact that they knew that it is possible that they need to maybe throw it in the garbage if the clinical trials in humans fail. So point A and the end part was taken care of. The distribution today with good transports and all these things should be very quickly. The only thing which was remaining was the clinical trials. So the clinical trials, yes, they did fast track. They did have their statistics made. So you need to have a sample size to say that why should you have an efficacy of 60 to 80% after the first jab. There are certain biostatisticians who do this job for you, telling you that, look, you can't test it only in 10 patients, nor can you test it in 1,000 patients, but to give a power, I may say strength to your study, you need to have a power analysis of a study, meaning how many cases you need to really include in a particular trial to give you a justifiable, a sustainable result. That was fast-tracked, but no corners have been cut to give you the end result. So this is why, in fact, they have come very quickly in the market. And has there been any safety issue with that? Not really. I mean, as I told you that, these have been done by companies with very, very good track records in the past. Very intelligent and clever people are working behind all this, and they know the importance of these clinical trials for human safety.
Scientists at Pfizer claim that their vaccine immunity can last for 2 to 3 years. But I can say safely, I'm sure we won't need to take another vaccine for another year. Some of you might be taking regular flu shots or might know somebody who takes regular influenza shots, and influenza shots need to be taken every year because the virus mutates. So the good news about these vaccines is that once you have the technology in place, once you have the system in place, then changing the vaccine to suit the new mutant is not impossibly difficult. That is the easier part of the game. So maybe we will have new strains and new versions of the vaccine next year, but I think we should be good for a year or two.
Only thing that they need to, if they are in good health and they don't have any kind of allergies, they don't have to do any kind of tests. They just have to go and register themselves for the vaccination program and just go ahead and get themselves vaccinated. However, if you have friends who have allergies to vaccines, allergies in the past, allergies to certain medications in the past, those would be important to sort of segregate. They need to take some more information from their general practitioner or from the doctors who are there at the vaccination center, and give this information of the allergies so that a so-called vaccine allergy can be avoided.
If you've recently recovered, very recently from COVID disease, then that would be the only thing where you would want to delay your vaccination. Apart from that, no other test required. Not that you need to take an RT-PCR before undergoing a vaccination or an antigen test.
During the first vaccination drive for senior citizens that had started, we saw that people were scrambling at vaccination centers. They were overcrowded. There was zero social distancing at those places, and maybe many of the people did actually catch the virus there. So I would say it's more prudent to think about choosing a center which has got ample waiting area, well ventilated waiting area, scheduled fixed appointments. So that is more pertinent. When you go to the vaccination center, the major fear that is there about any vaccine is an immediate reaction to it by our body, something we call anaphylaxis, which is why at every vaccination center you will be required to be under observation for half an hour to see that you're not getting any disastrous side effects, and only then will they let you go home. The common side effects that people are facing, which some of us also did face, was some injection site pain,
fever, body ache. Some have a milder version of it. Some have some mild symptoms for a few days. All of this is what should be expected. Don't ignore if you continue to have a fever for days after the vaccination, especially if the fever doesn't start right after the vaccine, but maybe started 2 or 3 days later, and then you had fever for another 5 days, because you might be attributing it to the vaccine, but you might have actually got COVID somewhere in between. So please don't ignore a persistent fever for fear of it being an infection rather than for fear of it being a vaccine related serious side effect. Also, another thing, I've had this question asked by many people before, that I've heard that if I take Crocin or Calpol and try to suppress my fever, then I am suppressing the immunity and the vaccine won't act as well. And that's a myth. That's not true. Please do take Crocin, or any antipyretic, any fever medication if you do get a fever or if you do get pain. It doesn't have any effect on the immunity that you will be building up.
People are talking about the blood clots, which was seen as a side effect of few of the vaccines. One, they are seen a very specific subset of population, females, slightly younger. Second, they are exceedingly rare. They are very rare. The chances are probably 1 in 100,000 to 1 in several hundred thousands. Now, let me put that into perspective. If you were going on a long distance, a transcontinental flight, you would have several times more chances of developing a blood clot than you would have with a vaccine. If there is a young female who's on, contraceptive, birth control pills, she would have several times more risk of developing a clot than with the vaccine. So if both of these are very commonplace, then why should a vaccine be, something to be worried about? The risk of the vaccine-related blood clots, though very though a real risk and a severe risk in those who get it, is extremely, extremely remote. There have been no significant neurological issues with the vaccine. There have been some blood-related issues, but there have been no significant neurological issues with the vaccine. So there have been no significant neurological issues with the vaccine. There have been some blood-related issues, but there have been no significant neurological issues with the vaccine. So if the underlying condition is essentially neurological, there appears to be no major contraindication to the vaccine right now. Further research into your specific condition might take a very long period. So it's probably prudent to undergo vaccination despite your condition, especially if you're young. I would probably, just advise that individual to go ahead with vaccination. So there are certain kinds of drugs which depress the bone marrow within your body, which are or others which are kind of immunosuppressants. They decrease the body's immune response. A lot of conditions receive such drugs. Few patients on cancer may be receiving such drugs. Some people of autoimmune disorders might be receiving. Some people of skin diseases, chronic skin diseases, may be receiving these drugs. You probably best consult your doctor about which drugs need to be discontinued. We do not want the vaccine to be ineffective in terms of antibody production. So it's not that these drugs, would react with the vaccine and produce some, disastrous side effects. It's just that the antibody production would be much lesser with these drugs going on. So speak to your physician, and if he recommends bringing down the dose of a few of these medications, keeping in balance the efficacy of the vaccine on one hand and the underlying disease which requires the immunosuppressant drug on the other hand, it's best left to that physician. So speak to your physician if you're on specific drugs.
Whether they have an underlying neurological, cardiac, that includes immune-related problems, they should get vaccinated unless they have in the past indicated some severe allergic reactions to the drugs or to other vaccines that they must have taken in the past.
COVID infection right after they took the first dose, treat the COVID infection as your booster. So you've already got your second dose. Let's put it that way. The COVID infection itself is acting as a booster vaccine. You have got your second dose, so to say. Ideally, I would say that you should defer your second dose by about 2 to 3 months after since you tested positive. So maybe 2 or 3 months after your infection is when you should go for the second vaccine dose. Because the immunity offered by natural infection is anytime better than the immunity offered by a vaccine. So you are definitely better off already.
If they have been positive for COVID and they are asymptomatic from respiratory point of view, meaning that they have not been hospitalized, they did not require oxygenation, they don't require ventilation, etc. So those are the cases which need to be differentiated from so-called symptoms, which are viral related symptoms. So virus is what eventually it's a common cold. So you need to really differentiate between the priority of treatment. Priority would mean that they really require oxygenotherapy, they require hospitalization, etc. So those are the cases which are totally different. We're looking at those which will probably be having certain benign or small symptoms. Those, once they are fine, they take symptomatic treatment for their fever or whatever it is, they should again get back to the booster dose period. So this will be anywhere between 3 to 6 weeks, now depending upon which vaccine you're using, but usually the boosters are given anywhere between 3 to 6 weeks. Basically, alcohol, hardcore drinking of alcohol would have an effect on the immune systems. So typically that could have a role to play. But look, we're looking at that binge drinking. So once in a while, for social drinking, that's perfectly all right. But think of what the priority in life is. Do you want to get jabbed so that you quickly become more you get better protection, or are you looking at that short-term alcohol consumption that gives you high for 1 or 2 days and that's about it? So I think you need to put your priorities right and then work accordingly. But yes, alcohol itself, social alcohol drinking, is not going to have any role to play in the efficacy of the vaccination.
Protective immunity comes maybe around 2 weeks or 3 weeks after your second dose. Your immune system should start responding right after the first dose. So I'm sure it's already started to work as soon as you received your first shot. But protective immunity probably takes around 6 weeks from the first dose, so 2 weeks from the second dose. So we received, being doctors, being healthcare workers, we received the vaccine during the first phase of its launch. So we had 2 doses in a gap of 28 days. But data shows that the longer the gap is, the better the immune response is. I would say don't delay it beyond 6 weeks. I would say it's more important to have immunity when you need it, rather than being tempted that, oh, if I delay it for another few weeks, I'll get more antibodies. We don't know what is actually the cutoff for protective antibody. Maybe an antibody titer of 4 may be good enough. So no necessity to aim for titers in hundreds. It's more important that you get fully vaccinated when the case numbers are high. So 6 weeks, I think, is sensible enough. For Covaxin, I think they're still recommending just 4 weeks. But for Covishield, I think 6 weeks is recommended now.
That's right. So when Covishield came up with the initial studies, it was 4 weeks. In a subsequent study, they found that the antibody production was better with 6 to 8 weeks. But remember also that, as Gauri said, it is now that we most need the vaccines. We are approaching the peak of the pandemic in India, and you'd probably do well in not delaying it too much. So not at 4 weeks, not at 8 weeks. 6 weeks is a good median time to undergo your second jab. The efficacy of the vaccine in pregnancy has not been well established. Though we traditionally know that it probably can't go too wrong. So if you were to take a vaccine and then find out a couple of days later that a woman is pregnant, rest assured it's probably going to do no major harm to you or to the unborn child as yet. But if a woman knows that she is pregnant, then she better avoid the vaccine. because it has not been tested as yet on pregnant women. Tests are underway, so we'll know a few months later.
Currently, it has not been given to pregnant and lactating women. But I think we should just still be waiting for the clinical trials. So yes, there are certain. So today currently we are looking at the age group 18 and plus. All the major company manufacturers, they have applied to the FDA and to the European administrative competent authorities for vaccinating between 12 and 17 as well. I would imagine that pregnancy and lactation will come into this particular study as well. But I think let's wait for the trials to come.
And you can ask any doctor, any pulmonologist, chest physician, intensivist who is working in the thick of COVID. They will say is get the vaccine which is easily available to you. Get the vaccine which is accessible to you. It doesn't matter which vaccine it is. The more important thing is that you should get vaccine. Of course, don't mix and match. Don't take first dose of one and second dose of another. So get the vaccine which is accessible to you, and something which I had personally shared with you, Galvi, that rather than thinking about which vaccine, think about which center.
So absolutely true. Get a vaccine, which is a secondary point here. Once again, get a vaccine. But I have a slight preference of one over the other. But before that, let me give you a disclaimer that I've received 2 doses of Covishield. But I would probably slightly recommend Covaxin above Covishield. Is there scientific proof to what I'm saying as of now? As of now, there is none. But what I'm saying is based upon some theoretical potential advantage. Now, as Gauri mentioned previously, Covaxin has the entire virion or the entire virus particle to be, which was used for the vaccine production. So even if the virus were to mutate, one could assume that Covaxin would probably have good cross immunity against the mutated virus as well. Having said that, it does not mean that Covishield does not have that kind of efficacy against a mutated virus. We just don't have enough studies at the moment. But theoretically, probably Covaxin may be slightly better. But don't beat yourself if you can't get hold of Covaxin. Covishield is equally safe. I've received my entire family has received 2 doses of Covishield. So the vaccine does not give you infection. Remember, the vaccine gives you a part of the virus so that the body reacts to it and forms its antibodies as it would have done if you were actually infected. So once you've received a vaccine, you're not infective, unless, of course, you were already infected when you took that vaccine. So here's the scene. If you've received vaccination, you are harmless to a person who has not yet been vaccinated. If you are infected, and regardless of your vaccination status, you are at harm to anyone who has not been vaccinated or to anyone who has been vaccinated, because, as I said, reinfections can occur despite the vaccination status. So the vaccine does not bring you infectivity, it brings you antibodies. So a person who's received vaccination is not of harm to someone who has not. It's the infected person who can be of harm.
Yeah, and the reason why we keep continually saying that please keep your masks on and please continue to maintain distancing, social distancing, is because we don't want the virus to spread. Whether you are vaccinated or not, you may still be at risk of receiving the infection from another person, and there's no way of knowing who's an asymptomatic carrier. The vaccine does not make you a carrier, but you still need to protect yourself and others from any possible asymptomatic carrier. So yes, always masks, please. Please. I think masks are going to be a part of our lives for a long, long time to come. This COVID pandemic is not ending anytime soon. And we debate about the efficacy of one vaccine versus the other. Let me tell you, the only thing that is 100% effective is a good mask. So please put your masks on. That's the most important part.
So, at the cost of repetition, I said that vaccines can prevent severe disease. Now, vaccines, the end results of the vaccine trials have been how effective they have been in preventing severe disease or death due to coronavirus. They cannot essentially prevent reinfection. What can prevent reinfection? Masks and hygienic practices. So, until we come to a point where eventually, probably several years down the line, the virus will mutate itself to be a very innocuous kind of thing, or we've had tremendous immunity, herd immunity, more than 80% either getting vaccine or developing natural disease, when the disease itself is not severe. It will be probably no worse than a common cold. Only then can you think of doing away with your mask. And it's not in the foreseeable future. It's at least a couple of years away.
I really hope this video was helpful and your questions were answered. If you do have any further questions, Dr. Kishore, Dr. Gauri and Dr. Abhishek would be more than happy to address them. You can always reach out to me and I will definitely get you in touch, and we'll make sure that your query is solved. I mean, they'll make sure your query is solved. I'll just help you get to them. Stay safe and let's get vaccinated.